Hi everyone, welcome to TERF Wars Season 3 Episode 11, I think, which I might have put the wrong title on. I'll change that. Welcome to the show where we go through the last week's worth of nonsense coming from, Poppy's here, coming from gender critical people, TERFs, anti-trans people, transphobes in general. And we look at their arguments, we look at what's happened, and then we go through them together and we debunk them and we laugh at them and then we move on. And that's the purpose of this show. So one of the things I always say at the start of the show is that I go through and I anonymize as much of, most of the people who show up in the show. And the point of that is so that we can just address the ideas, and we're not here to harass people or target people. So please do not do that. Do not look these people up. I think almost everyone is anonymized in this one. Sometimes there are people who aren't, and that's because they're a very big person or celebrity or like organization, and it's relevant who they are. So that's why they're uncensored, and that still doesn't mean you have the license to go and harass them. Please do not. That's not the point. We're dealing with the arguments, then we're moving on. Anyway, welcome to the show. You might have noticed, I'm looking quite metal, but also that I have some bruises. I have I have a few big bruises. And that's because I've just come back from a metal festival, which is really exciting in COVID times to come back from a metal festival. And it was a metal festival called Bloodstock in the UK, and I saw lots of really fun bands and did some dancing, and it got boshed into a few times, and I actually bruised really easily, which is why they look so horrific. They're not really painful. Maybe if I poke them a little bit, but they're mainly just show. Like, it looks really exciting, and then it'll just go away in a few days. But yeah, it was a really fun time. And there was a lot of good things about it. I actually saw one of my favourite bands, which is a band called Creator, who is the t-shirt that I'm wearing at the moment. And they were amazing, and it was just really good to, be in that environment again, and all that kind of stuff, see loads of live music again. But relevant to this show, one of the best things about that experience was there was just no access to the internet at all. There was just too many people in one space, and my phone network couldn't handle it. And so that meant that I couldn't go on Twitter at all, and I just totally forgot about everything and was able to just hang around with my friends and random people I met at the festival, made some new friends, met a few of you guys, actually, interestingly. Shout out to everyone who came and say hi. And it was, I don't know, it's just so relaxing. When you're constantly on Twitter and arguing and seeing all this horrible stuff in the news, it can be so easy to get this impression that just everyone hates trans people and you just can't live a normal life. And I think for me, the biggest cure for that, constant thing being drilled into you, is to just go out and live life. And in pre-lockdown times, that was very easy because you could be told all week that, no one's ever going to accept you. And then you can go to the pub and meet 15 new people who all just talk to you like a normal person, and trans stuff just doesn't come up. And, you go to the toilet and talk to random girls in the toilet, and, they're all just nice and open and normal, and it kind of cures that thing that you're being told all the time. But then when you've had to stay inside for... Sorry, my voice has worn out from singing as well. Saw some really good sing-along bands. When you... what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So when you've been, told that that's just not going to happen, it can start eating away at your brain. And when you've been in lockdown for a long time and you haven't been able to go out there and kind of prove it wrong in real life, it can be quite stressful. And it just made me realize how the difference between feeling normal and just having a normal time and then coming back to Twitter and the news and all of the gender critical stuff is just like oppressive. It's just really horrific. I hate it. And I think maybe I don't communicate how much I hate it on Twitter or on YouTube. And I hate it. I truly, truly hate it. I hate the feeling of it. It's like just dread, just constant dread, dealing with these people. And yeah, it's just grim. And anyway, it was nice to get away, and I just hope that as lockdown starts to ease up in various places and everyone can get their vaccine. I had my double jab. I did a test before I went to the show, so it was all good. But yeah, as things start easing off, I hope that you are all the trans people in the audience are able to go out and just hang around with their friends and be normal. And I hope all the cis people in the audience who might know a trans person can invite their friends out and just be normal. Like, that's it. That's the cure for this. And it's great. So yeah, I just thought it was worth just talking about that. Just because I don't know, it's quite an important thing in my life, music, and it's just something that we've not had for a long time, and I think it has rotted my brain, and I think it's contributed to me feeling worse about my appearance, to just constantly have it shredded online all the time by these people who, that they just hate you so much, and yeah, it's just grim. But I had a really good time, and you might be able to tell I'm a little bit tired. My voice is worn out. I'm like battered and bruised. And I met some great people, and yeah, it was a good time. But perhaps we should move on with the show, because you're not here to just listen to me talk about music all the time. Though if you are, let me know, because I would love to do that. But let's move on to the show. So this is the first thing, which is very exciting. So a piece of news that I just opened Twitter to was Hobby Lobby, which is, I think it's just American, or maybe from the Americas, or maybe it's everywhere but the UK, or maybe if we have it in the UK and I've just not noticed. But it's some shop that sells crafts and stuff. And I think they're like famously owned or run by or directed by or something, like an anti-LGBT person. And here a trans lady who worked for them was disciplined for going to the women's bathroom 11 years ago, and she's fought them in court for 11 years, which is like I don't know, the stamina to do that it's unreal. And the judge has finally ruled that they broke the law. And there's this brilliant quote here which says, Somerville's sex is unquestionable. Oh my God. This is going to be hard. Somerville's sex is unquestionably female, ruled the Illinois 2nd District Appellate Court on Friday. Just like the woman... Sorry, Poppy's wriggling. Just like the women who are permitted to use the women's bathroom. So, that's quite a firm ruling here. So congratulations to the person involved in this, and congratulations, she still works there, which is quite incredible. And congratulations to all of the, trans people in the countries that this affects. So, well done. That's good. Some good news. Get wrecked. Fuck you, Hobby Lobby. Though I guess now you are legally an okay place to work, even if your manager might be shit. Oh, what's going on here? Come on. Right. So the next thing I wanted to cover was, I don't know if you remember last episode, it went on a little while, ended up being 2 hours long, and we didn't even cover all of the stuff I edited. So I just thought I'd cover the ones that I skipped past now at the start of the show. So there's two things. And so the first one is a little exchange here between me and Angry Clown Nose. So I say, The Sex Not Gender crew claim that trans women don't face misogyny because sexism is determined by sex. And trans women are male. So that's like, that's a common claim that I come across. And the reason I put sex in quotes here isn't because I don't think sex exists. I don't think sex isn't real, which is the classic J.K. Rowling claim. You know, it is obviously real and it's obviously a thing, but the gender critical idea of what sex is wrong. They think that having sex is just this one property you have in your body somehow, which is either strictly M or strictly F, and that's all of the options, and it can never change, and you can't really define it, and sometimes it's chromosomes, but then it's not, and sometimes it's gametes, but then it's not, and then sometimes it's gametes. It's just like this kind of magical entity. It's just like this property. And so that's why I'm saying sex here. They're claiming that you have a property, which is a binary property, and they're calling it sex, but it isn't any of the actual measurable sex characteristics. It's another property, and they could claim that it's like described by or determined by real measurable sex characteristics, but it isn't one of them. Because if it was one of them, they could point to which one it was, and they could show us it was binary, and it isn't. So that's why I put sex in quotes here. And when I put male in quotes here as well, it's because their property sex only has two values, and you either have one or don't. And then they claim that this property of sex, the gender critical property, is what determines sexism, sexuality, you know, how people treat you in society, everything. And it just plainly is not. I mean, that's just false. I mean, it as a model of how the world works, it works for most people because most people are cis people, and most people's gender critical sex is the same as how they're viewed in society, and matches up with most of their sex characteristics in most cases. But as soon as you start talking about trans people, or sometimes intersex people, or even sometimes some cis non-intersex people in rare occasions, like this just doesn't hold up, and it's just broken as a model. Anyway, so this person then says, would you like to show where I've come to that conclusion? Why don't you actually engage with what I actually say rather than what you hope I might say because you've got all your arguments worked out? So they did have a point here in one sense, in that they said, you know, what do I think that's wrong? And I was like, well, you're gender critical, right? You're part of the Sex Not Gender crew, because they were hashtag Sex Not Gender. And I was like, and here is an issue with hashtag Sex Not Gender. It's that everyone who says hashtag Sex Not Gender goes on to then, like, what the hashtag means, what this whole movement means is you have a property which is binary, which I think determines how the world works, and that's demonstrably false. Like, that's the claim contained within hashtag Sex Not Gender. So I said, well, here's an example. They hadn't made that actual claim literally, but by being part of Sex Not Gender, like, either that is the claim they're making, or they didn't really understand what this hashtag means. They were the two options. I went for the good faith reading. But then they tried to do a little dodge, you know, the classic debate bro strategy is to go, well, where did I say that? And you can go into some argument about whether they said it or what they really meant. But the best thing to do then is just ask them the question. So I said, if you agree that trans women face misogyny and that by sex matters here, you mean that it's more complicated than the simple binary in this context, or that it doesn't apply at all, but I disagree there, then I'm happy to apologise on this one and pick something else. So here I'm trying to, I know, like, we all know going into this thing, this is one of the little things where you just constantly have to dance with them. And it's just so tedious and it's pathetic because they will never just say what they're thinking. They won't just come out with their arguments. They always have to dance around and pretend they haven't really said it and hide what they think. And that, like, we all know that going in, but if you just accuse them of that straight away, it then gives them the advantage of saying, oh, you're just accusing me of random things. So I always try and give them the option to duck out. And here I'm saying, well, if when you're saying sex matters, you're not making the claim that trans women don't face misogyny, you're not making the claim of, you know, sexuality works based on your birth chromosome gamete potential or whatever, then that's fine. Because I would say, if in non-dog whistle land, I would say your sex characteristics matter because they determine so many things. They determine, like, in medicine, they're quite important. But they also determine how you experience life in society, in the patriarchy. And that's something we should be talking about. And that's like what feminism, there's a lot of feminism is based around that. But when gender criticals say it, they're opposed to that because they're saying, well, your sex characteristics don't matter at all. All that matters is this M or F property I've assigned to you at birth, which is garbage. It's actually the opposite of sex matters. But when they're saying hashtag sex matters or hashtag sex not gender, it's just a dog whistle. So I've given them an out. Maybe you're actually saying it literally and you're not doing a dog whistle. And then they say trans women don't face misogyny because they aren't women. Trans women do face discrimination and abuse, and that should not be the case. So really what's gone on here is I've said, they came in saying dog whistle. And I'm like, mate, that's a dog whistle because it means this. And they're like, no, where did I say that? And I'm like, well, do you think that? And they're like, yes. Just stop fucking playing around. Stop being a bellend. Stop hiding behind dog whistles. It's so tedious. Just say, I think that misogyny is determined solely by your birth sex. And then I can say, well, that's demonstrably false. So your worldview is wrong. And then they can say, oh, I didn't realise. I will change my worldview. That doesn't mean I have to change everything I believe, but that means this new fact that I've just learnt, I can incorporate into my understanding of the world. Or they can say, no, I'm not going to take the evidence in. I'm happy to deny reality because I think that denying reality is less of an issue to me than changing my worldview. And that's just, it's just a classic gender critical exchange. They come in hiding what they think because if they just say it outright, then they make all of these strong claims and they're easy to knock down. So instead they have to hide behind dog whistles and say things that sound kind of true if you don't really know what's going on. Like, it's just part of it. This is literally just part of the whole, like, TERF wars. I mean, this is the whole debate. The debate is hiding what they really think behind things that sound good and dominating the media landscape so that we don't have any way of showing them what they're saying is rubbish. Anyway, and then the other thing we missed out was a really good example of Brainrot. It's a shame we missed out last week, but that means we get to experience it this week. So some gender critical person has come in with, has anyone got anything on the science on our ability to recognise the sex in people on site? So you know where they're going with this. They want a scientific paper that says we can always tell. And there'll never be one because you can't. Like, there's not a blind faith assertion. It's that we have evidence that you can't always tell. That's just a fact. I've written an article in it with evidence. It's not a peer-reviewed paper. But we have enough evidence to make that claim, like, very strongly. It's just true. But it's actually essential for the claim that we just addressed, that your birth sex determines the sexism you face. It's essential that you must always be able to tell for that to be true, obviously, because if you can't tell someone's birth sex, and sexism is based on your perception of the world or how people perceive you, then obviously those two things are disconnected and then the whole ideology falls apart. I mean, that is one of the core, like, fundamental problems with gender criticalism. But, so that's why they've got to keep desperately scraping the barrel for all this kind of crap to try and justify it. But then we get this amazing response. Radar. Human radar. We have subtle senses. Okay. Pheromones up close. But I had a view of a park last place I lived. I could tell females from males at about 2 blocks distance. 64 likes. 64 people were like, oh yes, my sense of radar. Not only do I have a sense of radar, not only not only can I send out not only can I like communicate with radar or experience the world with my sense of radar, but I can use it to determine someone's birth sex. So I'm not quite sure how that would work, but it would be interesting. I'm not even sure that you could use radar to detect someone's birth sex. I'm not even sure you could use radar to like do any kind of categorization of whether someone's a man or a woman at all or not anyway. But yeah, just thought that was a good one. And also there's the classic claim of like, I could always tell the like men from women, females from males. I could always tell because when I made the guess, when I was like, that's a man, then I thought, well, I must be right because I know. Like, how would you only, when would you know you were wrong? How would you ever know that you've made a wrong guess? Because you're not comparing it to anything. So all you're really doing is obsessively staring at people in the park out of your flat and being like, that's a man, that's a woman, that's a man. And every now and then being all paranoid and deciding that some random passerby, probably a cis woman, is a trans woman, secretly a man. They're a man, and I can tell because I'm never wrong. And the reason I know I'm never wrong is because I can always tell. Because I got radar and pheromone sniffers. I'm not, this might, so I did a bit of research on this a while ago, and I'm not actually sure we have evidence that humans have pheromones. I would love to know if you have evidence for or against this, but I actually think it's a potentially, or at least was at one point, a controversial claim. Yeah, but if we do, I would be very surprised if they weren't determined by hormones. And if that's the case, like that would be very what's the word? I'm predicting here. Were we to have pheromones, which I'm not confident, they will probably be hormones. Maybe not. And then maybe you can sense them with your radar. Let me know. Hit me up with some science. I'd love to know. Person who's definitely not a robot. Red square in the name. So this is a bit small text here. You might not be able to see it if you're reading on a smaller screen. But so this is something that has been going on for a while. Basically, the England and Scotland are constantly racing to be like the home of transphobia in the UK. And every now and then, one of them gets the upper hand. And one of the things that's been going on in Scotland quite relentlessly is that they've been attacking Rape Crisis Scotland. And so Rape Crisis Scotland is, I think they describe themselves, it says here, Rape Crisis Scotland is Scotland's leading organisation working to transform attitudes, improve responses, and ultimately to end rape and sexual violence in all its forms. So they offer helplines and support to survivors. So, you know, a very good service, and you can donate to them. I donated to them today, so I encourage you to join me. I've put the link in the description. You can donate whatever you want because it's just giving. There's no like minimum or maximum or anything. And I think it'd be great if we could like get in a bunch of donations today for them anyway, because it's a good cause. But also because the gender criticals have been harassing them for months since it came out that them, along with all of the shelters in the UK, support trans women. And they've just been getting a lot of flack for it. And, you know, they've been fighting back against it online and, you know, making statements and things. And part of that is recently they've made this statement. So there's quite a lot of information here, but I think it's probably worth me like just going through it and talking about it. So they say, our helpline is open to anyone, including women, trans and non-binary people, men and boys, affected by sexual violence. It's nightly from 6 p.m. to midnight, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, straight off, off the bat here, they say they actually are open to everyone. So that's worth noting, including cis men. Accessing support for many survivors is a daunting task and a difficult thing to do. We think that all survivors should be supported to access specialist services when they're ready, and these should be available at the point of need. So it's a good start. But this is the like important bit, and I think how they've delivered this quite well. They've said sexual violence is gendered and has disproportionate impact on women and girls, and our services reflect that. Women-only spaces are a core principle of rape crisis movement and upheld through our national service standards. These spaces include women with a diverse range of lived experience and views, including trans women and girls. So here they've like kind of directly addressed the like main gender critical talking point, which is if your service allows trans women in, then you're saying that there's just no rules, or you're saying that men and women experience the same things, or you're saying that the services should be like equal in what they do, and like this is kind of a standard feminist point being again appropriated and like forced through a load of nonsense to make it into an anti-feminist, anti-trans talking point. When we say we want to have women's rights, or when we say we want equality for women or something, equality can be a sort of deceptive word, because equality could mean we give the same amount of funding to the victims of sexual violence, to men and women, boys and girls, and all of the different groups get exactly the same funding. But if the groups are affected by them by different amounts, if one group is affected 10 times more than the other one, then equal funding wouldn't actually be the best. It wouldn't produce the desired result, like from a feminist perspective. What we would actually want is like appropriate funding. So the group that had 10 times more of the issue would get 10 times more of the funding. And that sounds quite straightforward there, but it can be hidden behind the word equality, and sometimes it's used by people opposing feminism to, end up fighting against women's rights and make things less fair for women. So here they've like directly addressed that, and they've said our service is open for men and boys, cis men and boys, trans men and boys, trans women, trans girls, non-binary people, and cis women and girls. It is open for everyone. However, we acknowledge that some groups are affected more than other groups, and they're just highlighting this point that trans women do face misogyny. They do face sexual violence targeted at women, and they do face sexual violence targeted specifically at trans women as well. So they're addressing this thing that's been going on for ages, but there was a particular event. They say, on the weekend, we became aware of a coordinated and harmful claims circulating about rape crisis services in Scotland, stemming from a Twitter thread that questioned the provision of women-only spaces in rape crisis centres. The classic gender-critical talking point: if you help trans people with the misogynistic sexism and sexual violence they face, therefore you don't have women's spaces, you don't have services targeted for women, you're not prioritising women. And they have addressed this, and that isn't the case, and it's nonsense. Fueling misinformation about what support looks like and what can be expected from support services. It's harmful and creates a barrier to accessing support. And this is the main focus of this thing they put out. I just want to make it clear, I'm not at all associated with Rape Crisis Scotland. I'm just reading out their public statement and adding on my own view. But they've said, it's deeply regrettable that some see fit to do this. We often hear from survivors that engaging with rape crisis support saved their life, and we would urge people fear-mongering about services to consider the impact that dissuading people from accessing support has on survivors. This is not compatible with our view of a feminist Scotland. And I think this is the point that, I don't really talk about enough. And it's that when they're, the main thing that people talking about, there are so many people who are single issue anti-trans now. The news has to talk about it every single week. That they're fear-mongering about trans people. And fear-mongering about trans people affects all trans people. And as we've talked about before, it also affects some cis women. And because it's general, like, pro-patriarchy nonsense, it affects everyone to some degree. But, like, it also specifically does negatively affect survivors of sexual assault and rape. When there's loads of fear-mongering saying there's going to be men, sex offender men in your spaces, there's going to be sex offender men in rape crisis shelters, and you see that in the newspaper every week, do you really think that we're going to have the same number of people accessing these services when they need them? No. For example, lots of gender critical people, as we've discussed before in I think in TERF Wars and also in XX Factor, and it's something I brought up before, that there is a number of gender critical people, especially gender critical women, who are the survivors of some kind of horrible rape or sexual violence or abuse, or domestic violence. And, they're in this very, they're in a bad place. And the gender critical movement kind of preys on them and says, join our movement. They're just trying to come for you. And they, like, all of the ex-gender critical people I've talked to or lots of them have cited this as like a motivation for getting into gender critical in the first place, is that they were being told that, trans rights were going to make people like them have a worse time, and it sort of triggers the feelings inside of them and can make them panic. And I actually have two interviews on my channel, one with an ex-gender critical trans woman and one with an ex-gender critical cis woman, who both say similar things, and it's interesting to hear their perspectives, if you want to check those out. But yeah, I just think that, all this fear-mongering is affecting so many groups, and we can say, oh, it negatively affects cis women. And often we'll talk about how there will be cis women who will be misgendered and asked to leave the toilets, and, who knows what else and worse. It could be very bad. And there's loads of examples of that just constantly all the time. And I know quite a few cis women who have experienced that. And it's getting worse, and it's a direct result of the anti-trans panic. And that's quite an easy one to explain to people, because you can just say, there's such a panic about trans people. They were just accusing random cis women of being trans women now. But it also affects them in this other way. When there's all this fear-mongering, you can't go outside because there'll be a scary trans woman there. It will ruin people's lives. People who are, in a way where they are rightly fearing of a lot of things, and you bring in this new all-encompassing fear and tell them that they're right to fear it, and you keep feeding this fear, they're going to be trapped in this state, and it's going to stop them accessing help. And enough so that, experts like the people at Rape Crisis Scotland have pointed this out. So yeah, they go on to say, the work that they do, and they've got their core principles here. And they're also saying, we have invested significant capacity in trying to respond to these attacks to offer reassurance about the reality of rape crisis provision, our ethos and values, and commitment to supporting survivors. Our time and capacity is limited. Communications at Rape Crisis Scotland are handled by a tiny team who are also working daily to shift attitudes and public perceptions of sexual violence, improve media coverage, support local centres, and platform the voices and experiences of survivors. This is the work we should be focusing on. So yeah, not only is it scaring off the people who need these facilities, and not only is it trapping some of these people in this cycle of making their situation worse and feeding them for just to use them as a prop for the gender critical cause. which is disgusting on its own. The people who are working to make people's lives better, like the people at rape crisis shelters, are having to deal with this ridiculous attacks. It's just disgusting. The whole thing is disgusting. Like the gender critical movement picks something like this and they just relentlessly harass them. And it's going to be making these people's jobs worse, making their lives worse, making them struggle. They will stop enjoying going to their jobs. And I'm not saying that it's an enjoyable job, but it's an important job. And I'm sure some people, I'm sure you enjoy it. I'm sure there are people who enjoy it and get some kind of sense out of it. So I wasn't trying to say it's a terrible job. What I'm trying to say is that it can make the idea of going to work in the morning like fill you with dread, knowing that you might have to deal with some huge pile-on from a load of like disgusting, hateful people who just want to use rape crisis shelters as a prop to attack trans people with. They don't care about any of the survivors here at all. Not at all. They do not give a fuck. And it's just grim. So again, if you can, it'd be great to donate to them. I've put the link in the description of this video, and you can also get there via their website, but it's just the Just Giving link. And then at the bottom, they included some of the tweets, and I think just reading these, I've included these too, because just reading them, you can just instantly see that they come from gender critical people. Like, these aren't coming from MRAs or incels or any other just random haters. Got anything to say, you fucking cowards? Are you too busy searching for your missing spines? I guess that could have come from anyone, but some of the other ones, we already know what they are: a bloody disgrace and betrayers of women. They crawl. Like, dehumanizing. Like, this is scary stuff. Describing people who work at rape crisis shelters as betrayers of women. Like, what are you talking about? What are you doing to help like these survivors? Are you working in a really demanding job trying to help desperate people and trying to manage the needs of men and women and trans people and cis people? No, you're just writing abuse to the people doing it on Twitter because you're a fucking piece of shit. Here's someone claiming that Rape Crisis Scotland is now an abusive organisation, capping for fetishistic men and using women as validation props. What is wrong with you? It's so disgusting. It's just absolutely vile. We haven't even delved into the transphobia in this comment of describing trans women as fetishistic men. It's disgusting before we even need to approach that of like, what's going on here. And again, just pointing out that men already use this service. Cis men already use this service. They do not care. This has been the situation for ages. I don't know the dates involved for Rape Crisis Scotland, but I do know that there aren't any shelters in the UK that have ever excluded trans women. So some of them have been open for many, many years, and this has been going on for ages. And lots of them do also have space for cis men and boys. And the issue here is that this fear-mongering has generated about trans women. Now suddenly that's an issue, and it's only an issue about trans women. Because to them, there are men and there are crazy, fetishistic, perverted men who are going to try and rape you in the toilets, and that's what a trans person is. And that's it. And that's why to them it's the biggest issue, and that's why it's so obviously just disgusting fear-mongering. And then this last one, what the fuck? Why do you hate women so goddamn much? What the fuck is wrong with you? These people are working to try and, address rape and sexual assault and, focusing on women and directly helping survivors. And not just helping survivors in a time of need, but campaigning in the media and trying to change the way society works to make it better for all women, cis and trans women. And you're just accusing them of hating women. But you absolutely lost your mind. Or equally, like quite possibly this person has. But equally likely is they just do not give a fuck, and this is just the meme that they come out with. If you disagree with gender critical people, you hate women. That's just what you say. They don't care. They don't care about people who hate women. Like, they're hating on women here. They don't care at all. They just know that that's what they have to say, because that gives them the credibility in like in the media. That's like how the movement does it. Appropriates feminist language. And this is like an example of it. Do you get off on it? Oh man, this one's so disgusting. It's hard to read. Accusing a rape crisis shelter of, do you get off on ignoring the pleads, I guess, of raped women? Does it excite you somehow? Like, that's absolutely fucking vile. Oh god, I probably shouldn't have included that. That was so grim. Right, let's move on. But it's still going to stay grim, don't we? We will move on to some less heavy things. But this showed up in my mentions, and it was someone I know, and it just makes me like disgusted looking at how gender critical people reply to these people, to people in need, so to survivors. Sorry, I'll read this out first. But so this lady says, when I was raped, it took place in Scotland. I was too scared to go anywhere near anything in Scotland because of the fear I had of being a pre-op trans woman who had been raped in Scotland. This hate costs and ruins lives when people are at their lowest. Like, I don't really care if I disagreed with this person on all politics. Like, even if the person saying this was like gender critical or anti-feminist or anything, it doesn't matter, because there is some level of humanity that you have to have for someone who is the victim of, like, rape or sexual assault or domestic violence or any kind of abuse at all, to just be like, that's horrible. I want you to be able to live a happy and safe life, and I want this to never happen again to anyone else. It doesn't matter if I hate you as a person. I don't hate this person. Don't worry. I'm just saying that, like, love to you. But I'm just saying that it doesn't matter if I did. There's some level of humanity here, and they just do not have it, because they've managed to dehumanize trans people so much that we're just like subhuman to them. And you can just see it in their replies. Just come in with, instead of trampling all over women's services, why don't you get your own? You're a man. Campaign and fight for your own services. Rape Crisis Scotland already caters for men. So this doesn't make sense as a comment at all. They don't care. They have absolute, total disregard for the situation. And rather than, there's no like, I'm sorry to hear that, but I think the system should be changed. Like, I wouldn't agree with that. If someone came in and replied here and said, I'm really sorry I experienced that. No one should fear going to a whole part of the country they live in, and there should be services available for you, but I disagree on how the services are provisioned for trans and cis people or something. If they said that, I would disagree with them. But that would be like a humane, human response. A normal thing to say that's not fucking disgusting. It's not part of, like, the kind of stuff that you could only say if you had dehumanized someone this much. It's just horrifying. And I guess just one last thing I will add on this is, if you have experienced anything like this and you want to kind of speak out about it because it's affected you, and the debate is just treating you as a prop, and is just talking all over you, and often claiming to speak on your behalf and saying the opposite of what you actually think. I understand the urge to speak out, and it's, something I do when I speak out about just my experience as a trans person or my experience as a woman. And I have been sexually assaulted in the past, and I've talked about it. Just be very careful saying it to gender critical people, because it's very difficult to calmly open up about something which is often very painful, and some people have experienced horrific things, and to have them just treat you as if they just don't care, and or worse. And I've been told I deserved it before, and I've seen them saying to a trans woman who was raped that she probably enjoyed it and all this kind of stuff, and it's sickening. And to see them saying that about me or my friends makes me feel like genuinely ill. I've cried over it before, just seeing my friends being treated like this, because like just straight off seeing it, because it's so bleak. So if you want to do it, whenever I talk about, sexual assault and rape and domestic violence, when talking to gender critical people, I just talk about it in general, because it's just too heavy to talk about personal things that affect me or my friends, personal experiences. So just consider how you will feel if they try and make you feel bad. Only use yourself as an example when you're in a place where you can do that. And if not, talk in general terms, and if not, just stay out of it and write a blog just unconnected to you, or donate if you can, or just look after yourself first. That's the most important thing, and then look after other people, and then go arguing and stuff if you have the energy and if you're ready for it. So I'm not trying to be patronizing. I'm just saying in my own personal experience, I've stopped using myself as an example for anything, because if you use yourself, if you open up to someone and say, one time this happened to me, and they're like, you deserved it, or why should I care, or you're a liar, you never did that. It hurts a lot more than if you say, sometimes people experience this, and they go, they're lying, and you're like, well, that's ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on to something a lot more positive. I guess it's positive. So there was a trans rights protest in London, unfortunately on a Friday, so I couldn't go because I was at work. Have the next one on Saturday, please. People have different work days, so I understand. And anyway, there was a big protest, and there was a really good turnout, and there was lots of great speeches, including from some of my friends. Actually, I should have linked those. I will try and remember to link those. And the reason I say I think it's positive is it's always great to see a big trans rights turnout and people, taking action and demanding things. But protests kind of make me feel, like sad and angry that they have to happen. So amazing to everyone who turned out to this, and everyone who worked to do it, and who was involved. Says here, a protest in London saw trans teens and elders standing alongside each other, demanding justice, liberation, and the sacking of Tory Equalities Minister Liz Truss. Great, I stand behind all of that. Fuck Liz Truss. Hundreds of trans and non-binary people and their allies went to the trans rights protest outside Downing Street in London on Friday. Attendees listened to almost 3 hours of speeches from activists, authors, poets, politicians, and artists, which addressed both the material hardships facing British trans people today and what the government and community can do to tackle them. Great, amazing, some real proper action, much better than anything I do here. So that's a good thing. Solidarity. Though, of course, there was a utterly ridiculous gender critical reaction to this entire thing, because there has to be. There always is. So here was a person who I have talked to and asked if I could discuss this. So she gave a talk, which I haven't listened to. I'm really sorry. I will do if I can find it online. Perhaps you could link it to me. And then this is Graham Linehan's response. And he said, is there anything creepier than adults wearing t-shirts for toddlers? You fucking idiot, my goodness. So my first response was, before even noticing what this was, I was like, how would an adult fit in a t-shirt for a toddler? Like, clearly this has been made for an adult, right? Because it's the size of an adult. This is an adult person here. Or at least definitely not a toddler. Like, what are you talking about? And then looked and noticed, like, this is a Pokemon t-shirt. So this, I mean, it looks, my next thought was, oh wow, it looks very well made. It's most probably not like some handmade t-shirt or like some screen printed job. So then so this Pokemon here is Sylveon. Oh god, it is, right? I hope I just got that right. This is one of the Eevee evolutions, and it's from one of the games I haven't played. I hope it's Sylveon. I'm going to get shredded in comments if it's not. But I just Googled, and I found that you can actually buy this t-shirt from EMP, and I've put the link in the description. I have no affiliation with EMP. I just know that I'm going to get loads of people asking. And here is an adult modelling the t-shirt. And if we have a look, it's actually marketed towards women. So this is an adult human female wearing a t-shirt with a Pokemon on it, because Pokemon came out in like 1990 something. I think the games came out in the UK in 1998. Though I said that on Twitter and loads of people gave me different information. So it came out in different places, but it came out in the 90s. And so most of the people who liked Pokemon as children are now adults, surprisingly. For example, myself. I loved Pokemon when I was little. And I still like it in a nostalgic way. I still like some of the Pokemon and stuff. And in fact, I have, as you might have seen, I have several Bulbasaurs around. This one's now invisible because of the green screen. So like the idea of having a Pokemon on a t-shirt isn't... I've seen loads of people have that. I've gone to fancy dress parties before where people have dressed up as Pokemon trainers. People still like Pokemon. It's like a thing. I've seen Pokemon backpacks and Pokemon umbrellas and Pokemon wellies. Like Pokemon is like one of the biggest franchises in the world. You can buy Pokemon anything. I wouldn't be surprised if you could get like a Pokemon wedding ring or a Pokemon wedding dress or something, that's like only for adults. But of course, Graham Linehan was offended by it, and obviously lots of gender critical people were too. Because whatever he says, they will just blindly parrot. But like, so, why is he actually saying this? And what's really going on here is the exact opposite of this J.K. Rowling tweet. So this is their weird culty tweet that they all turn up every day to like, even though that's not how the Twitter tech system works. A previous episode of TERF Wars, we covered the absolute madness of this tweet. Like, it is a proper like cult relic to them. But the first line is, "Dress however you please." And one of the there was a lot of ridiculous things about this tweet. But one of the ridiculous things was that gender critical people absolutely do not stand by dress however you please. Quite often, all they do is post a picture of a trans person and rip on what they're wearing. Like, that's a standard gender critical pastime. Dress however you please, if actually implemented by gender critical people, would half of their output. What else would they even do if not rip on trans people's appearance? So here is a person dressing however they please, and here is a gender critical person having an issue with it. And like I think the angle that he's going for here is this is like a children's thing, and trans people dress up as children because we conflate being trans with some kind of dressing up as babies or something, and therefore all trans people are perverts. So I don't know what Pokemon is, or this has pink on it, and therefore a trans person wearing pink is a pedo. Like that's the vague argument, and it's not even an argument, and that's the point in all of these like gender critical things where they just show a photo. The idea is, I mean, for the ones who plan this stuff, the idea is, here is a photo that is going to trigger a transphobic response in some people, and that's it. That's the full argument. You know, that's the point. That's why Graham Linehan posts this stuff. And for some of them, they see a photo and they're like, ugh, I need to post this to other people. And then maybe they'll go, ugh, too. And here the is someone who, well, I mean, a person wearing a Pokemon t-shirt, but because it's related to trans people, and because I've related trans to being, like, to do with I've related Pokemon to do with being a kid, therefore I can now make this link that's already in my mind. I've already got this idea. I've already seen that one person who, from like 15 years ago, who was a trans woman who also dressed up as a baby. I've seen that photo because every single fucking gender critical person on the internet has been indoctrinated into knowing who Stephanie is. Which no, like, the only trans people who learn about Stephanie are people when they go like, who the fuck is this? When a gender critical person demands that you explain this one random person from decades ago. And so in their mind, they've got this link. Trans people dress up as kids because they're paedophiles or whatever. The ridiculous panicky argument is, then they just see an adult wearing something with a cartoon on it, and they're like, this must be it because that's a trans person. So it's fucking ridiculous. Would they have had that response if they saw a cis person wearing it? If they saw this lady wearing it? I mean, these two could easily be the same age. The only issue here is, this is a trans person, this is a cis person. That's it. When you see a trans person, you make this transphobic link. When you see a cis person, you don't, because you don't have the same link. It's total garbage. It's such a ridiculous reaction. Like, at every single level, you can just see what's going on here. The actual post is just plainly straightforward surface analysis garbage. When you do any kind of investigating at all, it's even more obviously garbage. And when you try and understand the thought process going on behind it, it's garbage. It's just so pathetic, like absolutely next level pathetic. And it's a shame that we all had to waste our time arguing about a fucking t-shirt that you can just buy from the internet, one of the biggest franchises in the world. And instead of listening to the speech that they or the speeches that were given. And maybe that's partly my fault too, because I've just joined in with that and I didn't manage to get hold of the speech. Oh no, I've got a hair in my eye. I'm very sorry. This is Poppy's fault. I might just be blinking for a little bit. Oh. Okay, right, I think I've got it. Hopefully I'll be able to edit that part out. Anyway, that was complete nonsense, as we might expect. Oh, actually, just before we move on, something else worth pointing out here. Having an issue with, like, an adult wearing something for kids, even if that's what you want to call Pokemon. What do all of the gender critical people love? They're all putting their flipping, saying they're in Gryffindor or whatever in their profiles, and suddenly claiming to love Harry Potter and all this kind of stuff, which is another massive franchise that was marketed at children, and the children it was marketed at were kids my age, and they're now all adults. So it's exactly the same thing. Do you would you have an issue if there was a trans person giving a speech and they were wearing a Harry Potter t-shirt? I know for a fact you wouldn't have an issue if it was a gender critical person giving a speech wearing a Harry Potter t-shirt, because that's part of like your little dog whistle nonsense. So it's just fucking ridiculous. Anyway, What a joke. Moving on, here's a bit of a darker thing coming from Grand Linehan this week. So here he is discussing on his Substack, which is some ridiculous service which is completely happy to have, discussing Kiwi Farms, which, if you haven't heard of it, it's one of the darker corners of the internet. It's where the Christchurch shooter was radicalized, so it's kind of a grim place, and they kind of specialize in harassing people, I guess, particularly trans people. They have pushed a few trans people to suicide, which is quite grim. There was one recently, one this year actually. But you know, they hate on a lot of trans people, and a lot of LGBT people and women, and just minorities in general. It's kind of the whole point of the site. And here he says, I think Kiwi Farms does amazing work, but it's not useful as a resource because some of the comments are so grotesque that it just looks like Stormfront or something. They should do a spin-off site properly moderated for hate speech and show people what they have. It would be like the WikiLeaks of the trans scandal. So, like, Graham Linehan has come out with some truly grotesque stuff. And if there are some things on there that are too grotesque for him, I mean, I've never gone on that site and I'm never going to. I know that it has some really dark stuff on there. It's kind of like a no rules site. And whenever you have no rules sites on the internet, like 8chan and stuff, it soon degrades into like Nazism and paedophilia very quickly. And like for him to say this website that does good work looks like Stormfront, which is like the longest running Nazi newspaper, I think. Like, at what moment do you say, I think I'm doing the wrong thing? You know, when is that? When do you say, oh, this website that I think is great looks like Stormfront, but it's so grotesque that it's bad? I don't know, like, what's the issue here? Just grotesqueness? I mean, they don't just harass trans people. I mean, maybe there's a reason that straight, white, cis men find this site good, because it doesn't target them. And then to say, oh, they should make a version of it without hate speech. A version of it without hate speech would be like nothing left, would it? But then also just this last sentence, it would be the WikiLeaks of the trans scandal. I mean, what, the scandal of some random lady wearing a t-shirt? Or do you mean that trans people existing at all is a scandal? I mean, all of the trans people at all who have any kind of online presence have something on Kiwi Farms about them. You know, it's quite grim. I mean, does that mean that all trans people are part of this scandal? It's just so... Look at this stuff. Come on. Who knowing what these things are? If you were told... If you go and research yourself what Kiwi Farms is and what Stormfront is, and then understand what it could possibly be meant by trans scandal, and then read this and be like, yep, these are the good guys. These are the ones who I want to be supporting. Here's the rational arguments. Like, if there's some kind of scandal here, all of the mainstream news are just relentlessly posting garbage. They'll publish gender critical stuff at the drop of a hat. So if it's so dark, so grotesque that it looks like Stormfront, and like the Times won't even print it, and you think that's a good thing? You think that's good work? Oh, it's just unreal. It's unreal how deep these people go into this stuff to stop themselves from thinking about how rubbish their worldview is. I mean, it's just like the whole of your worldview is just built on these premises. And when you ask a few questions about them, they don't stand up. So they end up spinning off into some site that looks like Stormfront to make themselves feel justified in their actions and holding their broken worldview. That's mad what humans do. It's distressing and depressing. Anyway, on to the brain rot. So this was as you can tell, at a glance, this is the gender critical person. They have several of the they've got a smorgasbord of gender critical dog whistles and little indicators for each other. So they've got a picture of Mayor Forstater saying gender critical beliefs are worthy of respect in a democratic society, which is something she said, which is plainly false and not worthy of any kind of respect. Then they've got adult human female, they've got super bisexual, LGBT alliance, gender critical, these men need to pack up their balls and go, TERF, PERF, SWERF. They've got the suffragettes colours, which they've recently appropriated. So there's quite a lot of stuff going on here. And you find, like, this person only has 49 followers. So you find these people all the time. Joined in March 2021. This account will probably get suspended soon. They'll make a new one. It'll have all the new dog whistles. I just constantly find these people. I just stumble across these accounts all the time. I mean, like, hourly. They'll come and write something abusive about me or some ridiculous accusation about trans people. And I like to click through and just see sometimes who I'm talking to. And this person, I clicked through and I saw 2 tweets on their profile. And I just think this just happens all the time. And I just remember thinking, like, I should mention this just because here is a generic gender critical person. And here they are saying some slightly extreme for where mainstream gender critical is now, but just in line about gender critical. So the bottom one says, there is no such thing on this planet as a valid trans woman. Go dilate about it. So, I mean, I don't even know what people mean by valid anymore. I mean, does that mean that you're saying that you're not valid as a person? Or you're saying that theoretically the concept of trans women exist, but none of the ones alive today meet that criteria, so they're not valid as trans women, but they're still people? Or do you mean, like, not worthy of validation as a person? I don't know. I don't know what it means. But they're clearly just saying trans women bad. And then they say, go dilate about it, which I'm sure they were quite proud of. So dilating is something that many trans women who have had some kind of genital surgery have to do. Also, so do some cis women with some medical conditions. And some trans women who have surgery don't have to do it. So it is a thing that there's correlation with trans women. But, I mean, all right, okay, cool, good stuff. But then this is like the one I wanted to highlight. They said, I've said it before and I will say it again. Women have every right to violently and forcibly remove males from female-only spaces whenever they encounter them. And if you're in the context of someone who was talking about, you know, like men sneaking into women's toilets and hiding cameras or something, and you say, like, if you see someone hiding a camera, you know, it's your right to kick this person out. You know, most people would agree with that. But when you bear in mind that someone who is like this obsessed with trans people, like this is all they care about, just trans people, like proper single issue nonsense. When you get someone who's that obsessed with trans people and know that they call trans women males, and when they're calling for violent and forcefully remove them, they just mean attack trans people, attack trans women. And importantly, as we mentioned earlier, that means attacking people they think are trans women. And it's just grim that, like, this is still escalating. We're still seeing stuff that was extreme like 6 months ago in the gender critical movement is like now mainstream, you know, with all of this weird conspiracy theory about Jewish billionaires going from like fringe 2 years ago to being like at the center now. You know, these calls for violence are gonna escalate, I think. And yeah, it's just grim. And you're just seeing them from the sort of generic rank and files every now and then now. So just stay safe. But don't let them intimidate you, because this, you know, who knows who this person is? It's quite possibly some creepy cis man who lives in Canada or something. Sorry to all the Canadians in the audience. Maybe they live in the UK. But they're clearly trying to market themselves as being in the UK. And I'm not going to be intimidated out of going to the pub and going to the toilet with my friends because of losers like this. So you shouldn't be either. Even whether you're a trans woman or a non-binary person or a cis woman who has been targeted by these people before. This one is very depressing. So it's been a bit of a depressing week. So this has 1,200 likes. And I'm going to stop halfway through it at the point where I think it's important to. So they say, I'm a 47-year-old woman. Today my right breast has a cancerous lump. As a young woman, I was often embarrassed by my boobs. They are ample. I'm sat crying, thinking of the potential surgical proceedings I will go through. So this is grim, and this is something that, you know, loads of women, loads of people experience. Cancer diagnoses are always horrible, always depressing, and always scary. At whatever age, they are scary and depressing. But when they happen to younger people, you know, 47 is quite young to get a cancer diagnosis. And that's really sad. And I really empathize with anyone who has had that. And I've had friends my age who have had them. And it's, you know, very distressing. And I hope that they get the medical help they need and also the support from their friends and family. Sorry, Poppy's here. That they, you know, the support they need. But then this person who is sitting crying, thinking of the surgeries, then goes on to say, because I need them, didn't do this for a pronoun. Spelt wrong. What I'd rather hear is the 4,000% increase in young women that have no reason to consider a similar path has full medical evaluation. You've just received a cancer diagnosis today. And one of the first things you went on to do was go on Twitter in your announcement to your followers and make it about trans people. What are you doing? This isn't helping you. You know, your friends need to tell you to stop. They need to support you through this diagnosis, which I hope you overcome. You know, with all the help that you can possibly need, hopefully for free. Hopefully this person lives in a country with free healthcare. And they need to tell you to stop wasting your life on trans people and arguing about pronouns. What are you talking about? It's just so depressing. Why is this the first thing you thought of? And like, I feel guilty dissecting this tweet and like discussing what's going on here, because, you know, this is such a heavy thing, but like, what are you talking about? Why are you making this about trans people? And what do you mean, because I need them? Like, some cis women have mastectomies or breast tissue reduction surgeries because they need them, but not for cancer reasons, because it's giving them discomfort, or maybe even just for their you know, mental well-being. Maybe, you know, some people have very big breasts and that makes them uncomfortable with their body and they get them reduced a bit. It's, you know, that's what bodily autonomy is. And it's an important thing. It's like something that, you know, women and feminists all feminists should be fighting for. Of course, you should be able to go in and get surgeries that you want, not just like, oh, I just want this surgery, I just want this surgery, whatever. But some kind of evaluation that you have with your doctor and say, a mastectomy is right for me, or breast reduction surgery is right for me. We don't have to be comparing them with people who might need similar surgeries because of cancer or because of another medical condition. There doesn't need to be some hierarchy of like who deserves medical treatment and who doesn't. I mean, we can prioritize where the funding goes and what order these surgeries are done in. But why would you say I have a condition and need some treatment, and then instantly start talking about some other people who need the same treatment but for different reasons, and just claim they don't need it? And then this kind of, I mean, I can't quite decode it, but saying they need a full medical evaluation. I mean, yeah, I hope that all trans and cis people have full medical evaluations before they get any surgeries. I hope they get seen by the best experts that they possibly can and get the best surgery they can after the best evaluation that they can have. I mean, that's obviously a pro-trans rights position. It's just so I just feel like, I don't want to be patronizing this person. I mean, potentially they're lying, but there's no reason to suggest that. And potentially this person is, I didn't check their profile, potentially they're, full on hating trans people. But also potentially, this is a real person suffering with a real thing, which is really genuinely horrible. And they've kind of been like sucked into this horrible culty movement, which is telling them to waste their time and thoughts and stress on hating on trans people. So that was the first thing they turned to. I just, gender critical as a movement is failing people like this, is making their lives worse. This thought process that this lady had did not make her day better. It didn't make her life better. It's just grim. No one wins here apart from transphobia as a concept. Blech. Right, so this is a classic gender critical garbage I just saw floating around. I just thought I'd comment on. 200 likes. Gender dysphoria in females is a desperate attempt to escape the pain of womanhood, while dysphoria in males is an attempt to claim that pain for themselves because they see it as cute and sexy. So a key part of gender criticalism is to come up with a different reason as to why trans people exist, because it can't just be some people are born trans, because then campaigning against trans people's healthcare would be immoral. So they have to come up with some social diagnosis for why trans people exist. And if there were only trans men, you could say, oh, well, that's just because, the patriarchy makes women's lives really difficult and some of them want to be men to escape. But then also trans women exist. And also that doesn't actually make any sense if you actually talk to trans men. Also, if you thought it was a way out, I mean, why doesn't the person doing this transition? Maybe because it wouldn't make their life better and it'd make their life worse. Anyway, but then they need to come up with another reason for why trans women exist. And of course, it has to be perverted. Like that's the dichotomy we always see here. And it's similar to kind of the Blanchardian, all trans women are either like perverts or really super gay men or something, and they kind of just drop the super gay men thing. They love their little binaries and their little dichotomies, and this is an example. And I think this is just like the classic one. All trans men are just confused. All trans women are just perverts. That's it. Full stop. Two different causes of dysphoria. that's the full explanation. It doesn't fit with what we actually see. It doesn't, it's in direct contrast with the evidence and the science we have. And I just think this kind of sums up, I think this is kind of one of the core components of gender critical. Mayor Forstater just went and argued that gender critical is just believing in this kind of like magical essence of sex they have and that it can't change. But that doesn't hold. There are some other claims you need for that to actually make sense. One of them being that property of gender critical sex influences or solely determines sexism and sexuality, which it demonstrably doesn't. But then you need these other claims too, because very few gender critical people just have some belief about what they think sex is, but then don't go on to campaign against children's healthcare and to ban trans women from public spaces. And if you want to start taking away healthcare, you start needing a reason as to why, and an explanation of where trans people come from. And this is the one they come up with 99% of the time. And it's false. So this is a funny YouTube comment that I got the other day. Men and women can't be friends, Katie. And now we have some of those good-looking trans women really confusing things. The game's gone mad. So what's the issue here? You don't think men and women can be friends, which is false. I have friends who are men and I have friends who are women. So regardless of what you think I am, although I'm a woman, I have friends with both. And also, that's just kind of nonsense. But then to say trans women have gone confusing things. I mean, is the confusion here that you don't know which friends I'm not allowed? Or is the confusion here that other people don't know whether they can be friends with me or not? Or probably what's really going on here is the claim is that men and women can't be friends because if they're friends, they'll be in love with each other, which is often a thing that controlling men say to try and stop their partners who are women from talking to other men in like a way of sort of controlling them. And the claim is that they'll just have sex. And then you say, oh, well, there are trans women too. So now they're going to be luring people in all over the place. The game's gone mad. Something's gone mad, mate. So this was just an interesting tweet that I encountered. They say, I used to say, so this is a gender critical person talking to other gender critical people. And they say, I used to say I was a gay man trapped in a woman's body before I even knew what trans was. But I'm not. I'm firmly a woman, albeit one who enjoys short hair, wearing moustaches, and gay porn. Oh no, I've got hair in the other eye, for goodness sake. Oh no, I'm sorry, guys. Right. So, I'm totally happy to take this person at their word. If you're a woman who likes short hair, wearing moustaches, and gay porn, cool. Don't project your experience onto other people. Like, that's not what trans men are. They're not women who like moustaches and gay porn. I think that, there's a few options here. And I think maybe if we're talking more generally, there are some gender critical people, or I think a lot of gender critical people had some kind of experience themselves. Like, oh, I once thought, what would it be like to be a man? And then I thought, nah. And that's what being a trans man is. So I want to stop them because they don't know their own minds. There's a lot of them like that who had some kind of experience and they're projecting it onto everyone else. And then there is a much smaller contingent of closet trans people who have been sold this idea that their gender dysphoria will just go away if they believe in the the gender critical belief system, and they'll just think it out of gender dysphoria out of existence. They'll kind of have a blind faith in that, and it's kind of sad that that's the case. I don't like going around saying, that, oh, you're obviously a trans person, because it's garbage. There are loads of cis women who, have short hair for a start. And I'm sure there are cis women who like moustaches and gay porn. Like, cool. I don't think, and I just want to say to everyone here, there's nothing to gain from going up to someone and declaring them trans. I think that's kind of a garbage thing to do. So don't do it. But I guess in general, when we're talking about an idea here rather than a single person, it is worth knowing that the majority of the time they're projecting some kind of nonsense, and sometimes they're not, and sometimes it is some kind of closet trans situation. So it's just worth being aware of all the different possibilities of how someone gets into this situation where they're telling you this for some reason. Like if you're a man or a woman and you enjoy some kind of way of presenting or some kind of porn, that's cool. If you just randomly bring it up when talking about trans people, I feel like maybe you think that being trans is just watching porn or whatever, and it's not. So maybe talk to some trans people. Moving on. Oh, this is grim. So a cis woman said something pro-trans, and then this gender-critical person comes in and says, fingers crossed you end up with a man who you spend 20 years with, only for him to transition into a woman, lob his dick off. And then when he's going through emotional turmoil at age 45, and you're not down for it, he calls you a cis lesbian bigot and a transphobe. Delicious karma. So this is a weird thing to say. You're wishing that someone's partner will transition after you've been married 20 years and your marriage will break down. It's kind of weird, isn't it? But also it doesn't make any sense. But I'm just first going to laugh at lob your dick off. I guess these might be British words, but to lop something off means to cut it, and to lob something means to throw it. So to lob someone's dick off, you'd have to do a good throw, wouldn't you? But also, so in this case, a cis woman marries a man who turns out to be a trans woman, and then their relationships breaks down. And then for some reason, this trans woman calls the cis woman who married a man for 20 years a cis lesbian bigot. It's not impossible. It is possible that a cis woman would marry a man and then discover she's a lesbian, and the man discover that she's a trans woman. But I'm sure that's happened before in the past. But it's weird that you would pick that. It feels like this person's saying, I hope, you, I think you're a straight woman who's actually a lesbian, and you won't find out until after your partner comes out after 20 years. I feel like what really went on here is that this is probably a straight man saying this, and they just have this idea that cis lesbian is a thing, that you say in a tweet like this. They're accusing you of being a cis lesbian bigot or something. And so they just said it, and they didn't really consider this. It doesn't really make any sense. I feel like a lot of gender critical tweets are just linking together little phrases and sort of sections of ideas together into just a string, and it doesn't they often don't quite make sense when they're like this. You haven't quite thought this one through. It doesn't really make any sense, but it says a few of the keywords that you wanted to get in, and that's the important thing. Right. And so we're going to finish off with my... Oh, well, we're going to finish off the presentation part with my new section, which is Comment of the Week. If you write a comment under this video, then potentially you'll feature in next week's episode. This week's comment of the week is from Kaz Hatton, and they say, I love the crazy transhuman bit. Gender critical. You can't alter your DNA. Also gender critical. They're altering your DNA. And so this is commenting about the speaker we saw in last episode, who went on a very interesting conspiracy theory rant about transhumanism and COVID vaccines changing your DNA so that you're not human anymore, and George Soros and all kinds of stuff. Worth going and watch the absolute madness that was. And here Kaz has pointed out that gender criticals will often say you can't change your DNA. I've seen them say that all the time, and I mean that's one of these cases where literally at surface level it's false. You know, your DNA changing is a cause for cancer, for example. And then you sort of go down deeper and you're like, well, what DNA would I want to change? Like, what would that gain me? Why is, you know, if I could change, like, which part of my DNA are we talking about? Is there like a specific marker for being a woman? Because that's kind of seems what you're focusing on. And if there is, does that mean in the future we could change it? And does that mean if I went up to a man and changed their DNA so that marker was now a woman, but didn't change anything else about them, you would consider them a woman? And if that was the case, what happens if I just did it to 51% of the cells? Or what happens if I did it to 49%? Like, where's the line? Why is this important? Why are you talking about DNA? And the deeper kind of you go and analysing it, the less and less it makes sense. But it doesn't make sense from the top to the bottom. But then at the same time, they're also then panicking about billionaires who just happen to be Jewish, inventing a disease from China, world government injected DNA, they've got a patent somewhere where something transhumanism, trans people bad. I think it was something like that. I think that was the speech. Definitely worth a watch. So that was the end of the little presentation section. So I was a little bit low energy today. I didn't get much sleep for the last 5 days. I'm still battered and bruised, literally. My voice is a little bit wear out, but I think it was a good episode, and we got to go through some things and address some nonsense. I am aware that there was some fairly big news when I was away about Afghanistan, which looks really bleak. And there was also a ridiculous and really horrific gender critical response to it. And I was considering going into it today, but I want to do more research. I want to hit it with a fresh mind and have time to look at it all. So probably going to cover that next week, in which case there will be some more developments. And then we've got one last thing, which is we're going to open some mailbox items. So if you were just here for the dunks and the debunking, then I will see you next week, hopefully. It'd be great if you could join us. But if you would like to see me open, I've got 4 things to open. Just open them, have a look, react to them, work out what's going on, say thank you. Then I'd love you to stick around. And if you would like to send me something, my PO box is in the description. So yeah, I have 4 things. So this is the first one. Oh, I forgot to... Anyway, this is the first one. So let's open this. I have one of these things. Oh, I think it's the other one. It feels like books. I can't work out what this one feels like. Oh. Check this out. Oh, is it going to reverse for you? Moth's wooden puzzle. It's some kind of insect thing. Anyway, I saw the insect on it. I was like, oh. Oh, this is cool. It's like a really nicely made wooden jigsaw pieces. Smells quite nice. And I think this is the picture that it's going to make. Oh, that's really cool. I'm definitely up for making this. When I was I guess when I was really little I did jigsaws. But then as I grew up I was like, no, why does anyone do jigsaws? And then my mum got really into doing jigsaws at Christmas. I was like, oh, why does she do this? It sounds really like, it feels kind of really boring. And then I bought a jigsaw the other day of a death metal album and I was like hooked on it. And I just really wanted to be doing it the whole time. So now I totally understand why my mum does jigsaws. And so maybe it's just a mum thing. And when you get to a certain age, you just get into jigsaws. But I'm hyped to make this. So thank you very much for the person who sent it. I don't say. Oh, I do have a note here. Oh, hope you enjoy from April. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thanks, April. Let's put that to one side. So let's open. So I'm going to open this one now, which I think feels like books. But we'll see. It's quite heavy, actually. So I should open it on the thing. Oh, there's at least one book. The Devil's Notebook. Anton LaVey. Oh, isn't he the guy who come up with one of the churches of Satan? So I always have to smell everything. It's important. Oh, he looks proper like vampiric. Okay, wicked. Thank you very much. Yeah, author of the Satanic Bible, the Satanic Rituals, and the Satanic Witch. He also is the subject of a biography, The Secret Life of a Satanist. Thank you very much for that book. I shall read it. I don't have any like books about like religion and Satanism and stuff. I do actually have like a Hare Krishna Bible in my car, which one of my friends bought in a car park once. Oh, the Satanic Witch. Looks like we're getting some Anton LaVey stuff. Satanic Rituals. Getting the full set here. I'm going to be a proper Satanist after this. And the Satanic Bible. The full works, according to the back of that last one. Oh, I've got some more notes in here. Let's see what it says. Because it's got 4 books, it sent me the same note 4 times. It says, having seen how much you like conspiracy theories and researching the wacky and bizarre, I thought these would pique your interest. May these enhance your knowledge and increase your ability to take on more people. From Phoebe. Thank you very much, Phoebe. That's really interesting. I'll definitely have a look. I feel like I've heard different descriptions of Satanism. I haven't really looked into it that much, but I gather that there is at least some form of Satanism which does believe in some kind of supernatural, and there is some form of Satanism which doesn't and is very atheist. And then there is some form of that which is quite like ritualistic, and then there's another form which isn't at all. And I'm not really interested in supernatural stuff, but it'll be interesting to hear from whichever version this is. Yeah, that'll be interesting. Lots of the like black metal bands I follow are like Satanists in some form, I guess. So now I've got this one, which is a very weird. Let me just so I can show it properly. It's a very weird little parcel. It's like, so I don't know what this is going to be. Like the label to send it is bigger than the actual parcel. I don't want to show you the front though. Let's carefully open this. Oh gosh, I don't know how to get into it. I should probably have scissors on standby for this. It's kind of dumb doing it without scissors, isn't it? I was always one of those kids when I was little where it would be like your birthday or something and you open your presents And then your mum would be like, oh, let me get scissors. And I'll be like, no, I can do it. And I'd always be really grumpy and never let my mum use scissors. Oh, what are these? It's some kind of badge of like a turtle wearing like pants. Doing like a strongman pose. This one is of like some like fish man doing a sexy pose. And this one, oh, are they Pokemon ones? Oh, this looks like a Bulbasaur doing the sexy pose. Oh, you can't see it because it's gone invisible. So I think this one is a Squirtle. And I think this one is maybe a Magikarp. Go back in focus. What a ridiculous gift. Thank you very much. I would definitely display them somewhere. Unlikely to go on my metal battle jacket with any of my other pins. But they're definitely going to go somewhere, and I'm definitely going to show these to people. These are weird. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Very interesting gift. Right, and then I have the last parcel. I was actually expecting a letter. I'll open this one and then I'll just double check that I don't have a letter. This one's from Australia. This is pretty cool, getting something from Australia. Oh, it says what it is on the front. I won't read it. Let's see if I can open this one without a... Oh, I should show you the box first. Oh, it's covered in green bits. See-through. I can do it without scissors, Mum. Must have been a well annoying kid. Oh gosh. It's quite nice cardboard actually, so that's a pretty bland thing to say. But right, okay, let's see what this is. It's a mug, and it says Team Katie on it in a cat's head, and then on this side, it's like metal horns. What are they holding? It looks like it's holding some kind of cereal bar or something. Is it a Weetabix? Thank you. I'm definitely going to drink out of my Team Katie mug. I hope you didn't get Arden one. Amazing. If she ever comes to visit, I'm going to make her a tea in this. All right. I'll just double check. Thank you. I'll just double check that I didn't have a letter. Sorry, Poppy. I do not. Right, the reason I said I thought I might have a letter is because I met someone at Bloodstock and they said that they had sent me a letter asking if I was going to Bloodstock and it hadn't arrived in time. So I'm going to have a double check and then I'll go to the post office if I haven't found it. But to answer your question, as you know, I did go to Bloodstock. So anyway, thank you very much for everyone who sent me something. I hope it was funny watching me or you've got some kind of enjoyment out of watching me open some weird Satan books and some weird Pokemon badges and a cool mug and a cool butterfly jigsaw. I really appreciate everyone who sent something. Yeah, and I'll see you all soon, I guess. End of the show. Just appreciate my bruises again. They're pretty good, aren't they? What a joke. Why am I like this?